MTN SME Hub. Link to growth. Link to success. Link to the ultimate resource for business advice and insights.
Welcome back to the Big Small Business Show. In studio with us, we got Fabian Arends. He's the founder of Greenline Interiors. And we're talking about production systems. And so if you are one of those businesses that's in production, maybe this is something you want to listen to right now. So, when I started asking what you're doing everything manually, but all of a sudden there's an Excel spreadsheet and there's Sage that comes through. So there are some systems that you are using them there already. So for me, this whole journey starts with becoming obsessed with measurement. You could hear a lot of, how do you know? How do you know? I kept saying, how do you know? How do you know? So if you're going to become great at production, you have to become great at measurement, because measurement is the basis for your costing. It's a basis for your planning. You have to be able to measure things. Right. And you, in the unenviable environment of being in some, that big part of what you do is bespoke. So how can you do that? That's the kind of question that you're trying to solve, is it's not standardized. It's not a standardized production operation. You're not making beers and the same beers coming off the production line, every second. It's different things coming off your production line, so to speak.
Yeah.
So that's number one, is to start this journey about being obsessed with measurement. Number two, it's then being critical about what you're measuring. So then I started asking, what are you measuring? So are you measuring the speed to produce something? Are you measuring how many units? Are you measuring how much time people are off sick? What are you measuring? You start to think about what are the different areas of things that you are starting to measure, and be critical around, is this important to measure? Isn't this important to measure? Because when you become obsessed, you might be measuring a whole bunch of the wrong things. Then once you know what you're measuring, you have to have a sense of what your standard is against that thing. So, like if I ask the question, how do you know if they're quick or they're slow? And you say the team will tell me. Well, for me, if just to give you a sense of what I would be doing, is that when that person arrives and says, okay, I've been working at so-and-so shop fitters for the last 10 years, so it looks good on CV, you'd say, okay, here's an exercise, right? Make this thing, and you got 10, there's machinery, you've got 15 minutes to do this, and see how they do. Okay, and so you got a sense of now what the CV says and what they say they can do are two different things. Now, you might be harsh the first time, and so you try and get proxies to determine people's speed, around certain things, or the common things. So do you know, and I'm not technical at all, do you know how to do a insert name, whatever it is? Yeah, of course I do. Okay, how long should it take you? An hour. Our guys do that in half an hour. So it can even be in the questioning, but how long does it take you to do things? So you're starting to assess your labor, the speed of your input, your resources up front, because obviously the faster and the more efficient and the higher the quality of your skilled labor or semi-skilled labor, the better. Okay, so that's number one. So now you're setting standards for all these things, and you're setting time for all these things. Now, you touched on it when you spoke about in Sage. You said, is it complex or is it not complex? So you're starting to now categorize in your recipe. So when you're starting to price for your client, you're making up a recipe, because that's what you're doing. You're saying, this is my raw material, plus this is my labor. Okay. And so your way you're doing it is you're taking, what is my daily labor rate? But and I don't know if you are including to run the whole factory, all your inputs, or what does it cost per hour to run that factory. But there's times where people will be in the toilets on lunch. There will be when they're sick, when they are just having a bad day. So often what you do is you from a costing perspective, and there are different ways to cost, to make sure that you've got built-in fat into that system to ensure that you're pricing for all those other anomalies. But that's why I asked the question around cash flow, because often what I see with businesses with bad cash flow is that they haven't costed, not priced, but costed correctly. They think it's costing them X an hour, and it's actually costing them 2X an hour because they haven't added in all these other things into that costing. And then they still have forgot to do a markup on that, or they've forgotten a whole bunch of things. So I would go straight away to understand your labor cost per unit, and then try and categorize your units into, as you said, the complex, maybe medium, and maybe low complexity. So, and then you start to say that, well, this is a complex thing. Complex things take 3 to 5 hours. I'll take the mean, which is 4 hours to do that. And you start building up a recipe of how to do that, but you've costed correctly. And then I would look for standardized subcomponents where you're adding two things together, always to adding this piece and that piece together, always to make that piece. And you do a lot of that stuff. In that downtime in January, February, your guys are just, instead of sitting around talking about, the holidays, they're making those components and they go on stock. The downside is that you're locking up some money in stock. The upside is that when it comes time, you're just pulling it off the shelf. You're still pricing it, but you're just pulling it off the shelf. So in your busy time, you can get more out because you've used your downtime to make subcomponents. And you're thinking of that, and you put that on the shelf. Now, how much is hard to say without knowing too much, but that's where I would go there. Then I would look for production software. There is production software out there, and I'd start looking at production software. Even if you are not going to buy it now, you're going to at some point have to get involved with production software. And so go look at it, and then as you're learning, it's going to teach you what you need to be doing anyway, and what you need to be getting right for your production anyway. So as you're speaking to the people who are selling you the software, is that you're saying, well, how do I input all this? Oh, who's going to do that in what format? And you're starting to get the organization ready for that moment. And it's also teaching you as well. So you're learning from just having those conversations, and when the time is right and your financials are in order, then you would move to that production software, or maybe there's a light version of it that you can start off with upfront. And then the last point is to look at your labor in terms of specialized roles, that you start to specialize roles over time. When you're a small team, it's hard to do that. And in a bespoke environment, it's hard to do that. But the quicker you get to specialized roles, the more margin you will make, because those specialized roles you can charge more for, and they will take quicker to do, because those people do that same thing again and again. That's all we've got time for in our 8 minutes, Fabian. I hope that's given you things to think about. I hope it's given you things to think about. And as always, remember, if you think it, write it down and make it a reality.
The Big Small Business Show, proudly sponsored by MTN Business.